Hi, I'm Spyder and I'm back for part 17, okay? And the reason I'm doing it because I just wanted to correct some mistakes and go over some of Randy and Brosie's contradictions during the Waggle podcast he did, okay? And I got some harsh lighting here I see on the monitor, and you can't see the new banner with the new banner hats, the Spyder CFL Red-Zone Rule hats within the new banner that I'm going to have with the Grey Cup in Calgary. Okay, 107th Grey Cup in Calgary. So anyway, that's what it is. I should have pushed the monitors back further so they're fogged. Okay, like the Halifax fog. That's actually we're going to call that the Atlantic schooners. I'll get into that Atlantic schooner thing a little later. Okay, so I just want to go back and oh, by the way, before you watch part 17, and there could possibly be a surprise on a sequel that I'm going to do on part 18, and that will be it, okay? Until the spring or a little later than that, just before the CFL season or spring training if there is a season. I don't want to really get into that in this session. We'll see how that plays out. But you know my views on it. So before you watch part 17, please watch. It's very crucial to watch part 1, my intro and how I come up with my CFL Red-Zone Rule. Part 2, the presentation itself that I made to the Commissioner and the CFL on January 31st of 2018. And part 3, their decision, the result, the conclusion on part 3, okay? Very, very crucial to watch part 1, part 2, and part 3 first before you watch part 4, now right up to part 17. Okay, so I just want to make some corrections again. On the 17, okay, on part 17, okay, I meant to say 37.5%. That was the riders in 2018. Lowest average percentage of touchdowns scored in the red zone amongst 9 CFL teams. I said 35.5. I meant to say 37.5. Okay, and also I said 332 agents. I meant to see 332 free agents in the CFL. Can you imagine that? Isn't that unbelievable? It's hard to believe. It's lunacy. Seriously. And then also on when I was talking about the 7 Canadian starter ratio guaranteed spots on 12 on the 12 starting spots, I meant on both sides of the ball, offensive, defensive, which is 24, so it's 7. But the thing about what people don't understand about the Canadian ratio is that if the CFL team that they're forced to play and start, regardless if they're good enough or not, a Canadian player, okay, they could put 7 on offense or 7 on defense, as long as the total is 7. So if they put 3 on offense and 4 on defense, whatever, and there's an injury, like there always is, every CFL game, they have to replace that starting player, even if he's not good enough, with another starting player that's not good enough either. Okay, during the whole entire game, okay? And they have to replace them where they actually had them slotted in to play on offense and defense. Okay, they can't mix and match. It's ludicrousy. It's insane. It's insane. You know, people don't understand how bad it is. And I went over that, and I meant to put the Canadian ratio to bed, okay, because I did a really quite extensive coverage on it, and thank God I did, because I know a lot of sports fans in Canada aren't even aware. People that go to CFL games don't even understand. They don't even know there's a Canadian ratio. It's unbelievable. It's been a cover-up by the CFL and Mr. Ambrosi, the commissioner, because of course he was one of them. And he belonged to the Canadian Players Association, like I said before, and fought the CFL in court to stop them from allowing them, like every other professional sports league are doing, okay, to start and play the best available players and allow their coaches to decide who starts and plays, okay, in the CFL. So here we are today, and you see the result, okay? That should have been changed a long time ago. It doesn't work. It's old school. It doesn't work, and it's not working. It's not selling CFL 3-down football, and doesn't work in today's highly competitive sports world and sports leagues. It's obvious. Okay, just look at all the empty seats. Okay, and now the Montreal owner, they've been there a long time. They want to sell. I can't blame them. They're losing millions and tens of millions of dollars. Also, when I talked about also, you know, how brutal it is, where you're paying, you know, $45 up to $100 to go to a CFL game, and the coaches can't even play the best if they're the best American receivers or best players if they're American in every position for entire CFL game because they're handcuffed by the Canadian ratio. And remember, CFL playoffs, those ticket prices go up, and in the Grey Cup from $150 to $250 to $350 to $400 tickets. And CFL coaches, can you imagine? And the CFL players in the Grey Cup are still same thing. They're not allowed to start and play their best American receivers. They're not allowed to play the best players if they happen to be Americans in other positions. Okay, start and play them in other positions for a entire CFL game. Can you imagine that? I think, Ambrosi, you owe the CFL fans a big refund. Okay, because they're not aware they're being snowed and being ripped off. This is brutal. Can you imagine going an NHL playoff or Stanley Cup playoff game, and they had an insane, the Montreal Canadiens, the Toronto Maple Leafs that were in the Stanley Cup playoff had an outrageous, insane, ridiculous, dictating, handcuffing Canadian ratio, and they had to force to start so many Canadian players that weren't even good enough to be on the ice. They wouldn't even make it to the playoffs, okay, with a setup like that. So, okay, I'm going to get into some of Randy Ambrosi's contradictions now on the waggle, okay? See if I mention everything I wanted to mention. Oh, one other thing, when Mr. Ambrosi was actually talking about how many less Canadian football players are playing football in Canada, in minor league football, and in high school and college football. I thought I was tens and thousands. I was right the first time, but then I heard him. I thought again. He said 8,000. By the way, it's 80,000 less in the last 10 years. Can you imagine that? And there's a Canadian ratio in the CFL. Can you imagine that? It's unbelievable. So, Mr. Ambrosi, I want to call you out on some of your contradictions, or actually, it's like my son said, you're like a politician. Practically all your contradictions on the waggle, okay? Where you said, you know, we owe it to the CFL fans to find a way to have the best available players to start in the CFL. And Ambrosi, how are you going to do that when you have a Canadian ratio? Okay, a guaranteed Canadian starter ratio, and half the CFL roster that has to be Canadian. Okay, regardless if they're good enough to be on the roster, okay, or be good enough to be on to start in the CFL. Okay, so how are you going to do that, Mr. Ambrosi? You tell me how you're going to do that. Another snow job. Let's just check off all these snow jobs here. Okay. So, and also, because of the Canadian Players Association's monopoly, okay, made up of carefully selected Canadian old linemen like yourself, Mr. Ambrosi, that are basically running and controlling the CFL and dictating who starts and plays in the CFL. So how are you going to do it when you have a structure like that in place? And the owners and the CFL aren't even running their own league, 3-down football league. It's supposed to be a professional football league, isn't it? And the coaches can't even decide who starts and plays on a CFL roster, or who's on the CFL roster. Come on. This is ridiculous. Okay. And Ambrosi said, you said in the waggle, you don't want to take a back seat to anybody, referring to the NFL, when he won't even admit that the NFL is the CFL's competition. When unlike every other professional sports league, like the NFL and the Major League Baseball and the NHL and NBA and yes, even MLS and soccer are allowed naturally to allow, okay, their coaches to recruit the best available players and allow their coaches to start and play the best available players. Come on, Mr. Ambrosi, another big snow job, you know, contradiction here. I'm sorry. And you know, you say the NFL is not your competition. Then why are you moving the Eastern and Western Final then, Mr. Ambrosi? That was down 50 and 30% from Sunday to Saturday next year. And the 107th 6th Grey Cup in Edmonton down 23%, a million viewers, down a million views, the lowest since 2001. Who were watching the NFL and not the Grey Cup in our own country. And by the way, even Mr. Ambrosi in the Randy Rhodes show, you wanted to know if that should be changed too, the Saturday. Okay, the Grey Cup, and you say the NFL's not your competition? On the waggle, another unbelievable contradiction and a big snow job. Okay? Unbelievable. Another big check mark for you, Mr. Ambrosi. The problem with the CFL, Mr. Ambrosi, will not acknowledge and admit that the CFL, the NFL is the CFL's competition, nor admit that the Canadian Players Association is a big problem, nor admit anything wrong with our CFL 3-down game and why it's not selling, or admit the biggest killers and turnoffs of our 3-down game. Okay? Is this serious handcuffing dictating old school guaranteed Canadian ratio, which is a big killer of our 3-down game. And also recognize that the two biggest killers of our 3-down game itself, which are too many undesirable second down stops in the red zone, resulting in too many distasteful, predictable, non-eventful, boring, easy chip shot field goals that Mr. Ambrosi, my CFL Red-Zone Rule, will completely eliminate in the red zone or slightly outside the red zone, depending where the second down stop is made. Now that's, okay, get rid of the Canadian starter ratio and bring in my CFL Red-Zone Rule, and then you got a product to sell, Mr. Ambrosi, along with some other changes that I mentioned in my 6 fix that are very important, necessary, needed changes as well to be made. Okay? Then you got a product. Also, Mr. Ambrosi, in the waggle, you said that the CFL never wants to be labeled as a development feeder league, okay, and for the NFL. And so then why, Mr. Ambrosi, did you bring back the NFL window for the players, for the Canadian Players Association? That you know, it's obvious that you're on their side and in bed with them, okay? And that's why you brought back the NFL window. And what are you doing about and coupled with 322 free agents, they're non-committing, only 1-year contracts, okay? Can you imagine that Calgary Stampeders, their whole team was depleted, except for Bo Levi Mitchell and some other players they signed. So many went to the NFL and went to other CFL teams, okay? And yes, the AFL. The AFL, yes, the Lions Football League. And so, Mr. Ambrosi, you know, you're not helping the cause, you're making it worse, okay? And that's why more and more CFL top players have gone to NFL, signed in the NFL this year, more than ever before, over 20. And also signing in the AFL. And players that were drafted high, first-round picks signing in the AFL, like Chapman, and top O-linemen that are few and far between. There are a few in the CFL, and the rest are are in the NFL and going down to NFL tryouts and pro days and so forth, and trying to make it in the NFL, and couldn't care less about the CFL. That's why they don't show up to the CFL combine, or they don't not even commit to so-called Canadian CFL draft that needs to change to an open CFL draft, or committed to even playing in the CFL. And still there's this Canadian ratio, okay, and this basic Canadian Players Association that are controlling the CFL and running the CFL. That basically making a mockery and fool out of the CFL and the Canadian draft and the Canadian ratio they're not even committed to even playing in the CFL. Mr. Ambrosi, I'll tell you one thing. These are major contradictions and major snow jobs and a big cover-up. And this is what's really happening in the CFL. This is what's really going on. Okay. So Ambrosi, how are you going to ever go a 3-down game, which you said you had to do, that you had to do, and you said you were going to do, to sell a 3-down game around the world and get new TV contracts when the CFL and the owners and the coaches and the CFL aren't even allowed to start and play the best and most talented available players at every position for an entire CFL game? Can you imagine? Like the NFL, like the NHL, like NBA, like Major League Baseball, and yes, even MLS soccer can. Okay, if you want to be a real player, the CFL, Mr. Ambrosi, if you want to be a real player and survive, okay, in this highly competitive sports world of today, you got to allow the best available players to start at every position for an entire CFL game, and you got to abolish the Canadian starter ratio and abolish the, come on, guaranteed half a CFL team. Okay, there's got to be Canadian, but the guaranteed Canadian roster ratio, that's got to be abolished as well, and you got to bring in my super exciting, tailor-made for CFL 3-down football, Spyder CFL Red-Zone Rule that will eliminate the two big killers of our CFL 3-down game itself. That's what you got to do, Mr. Ambrosi. Mr. Ambrosi, you totally and deliberately ignore and avoid and refuse to talk about it. Okay, talk about it. Okay, on the waggle when asked. Okay, about, of course, the Canadian ratio wasn't even asked, but you wouldn't get into when you're talking about, oh yes, you know, we got to find a way to make the best available players start and play in the CFL, basically, so our CFL 3-down game can play at the highest level with the best available players. Well, why were you a politician? Why didn't you explain how you were going to do that? You know, it's another big snow job and big contradiction, okay, and a big cover-up. Ambrosi, yeah, you avoid deliberately, okay, and ignore. And Ambrosi, why didn't you say in the waggle that you were on the Canadian Players Association and fought the CFL against removing the Canadian ratio when the CFL at that time, like every other professional sports leagues, naturally, like I said before, wanted to be able to recruit the best available players to start and play in the CFL at every position for an entire CFL game, so CFL 3-down football can be played at the highest level with the best available players. And you went into court to stop them to do that. And now you're contradicting yourself big time, Mr. Ambrosi, and saying that, oh, we got to find a way. We owe it to our fans to have the best available players, the best players starting and playing in the CFL. Okay, so our CFL 3-down game can play at the highest level with the best available players. Okay, that's basically what you said, Mr. Ambrosi, which is a huge contradiction, Mr. Ambrosi. Big time snow job. And so, Mr. Ambrosi, okay, those are your big-time contradictions. So, Mr. Ambrosi, I want to bring this to your attention. In the CIS, Mr. Ambrosi, the CIS, they don't have a ratio that says the Mustangs have to play so many Ontario, okay, Canadian players and forced to start and play them. Or St. Mary's here in Halifax don't have so many maritime players, okay, and they're start and forced to play them, okay. Like the Mustangs, okay, you have to have so many Ontario players that they are forced to start and play. You know why, Mr. Ambrosi? Because they too, in CIS football, want to be able to recruit the best available players, so they can start and play them at every position, okay, so they can compete, all right? But in the CFL they can't? Unbelievable. That's your league, Mr. Ambrosi. That's your big snow job, cover up CFL, okay? Unbelievable. It's unbelievable, and you see what you get, and it's not respected. And the CFL, that's why CFL is not respected, the real professional football league, 3-down professional football league, or supported, okay, and perceived as minor league, second-rate football league. That's the reason. And can you blame them? They're not stupid. You know, people in Canada have a sports brain, Mr. Ambrosi. Why don't you put your sports brain hat on and stop covering up, okay, the real truth, what's really going on in the CFL. Do your job, and if you can't, take a hike. I'm sorry, but I'm tired of being snowed, and I'm so glad I'm smart enough to realize what the heck's really going on here. Okay, let's just move on here. So you said you didn't want to be labeled at a development league, Mr. Ambrose. That's another one, a contradiction, okay? I said, and a fetal league in the CFL. I went over that. I'm sorry, I covered that. Okay, so Mr. Ambrosi, okay, I covered that. Oh yeah, Mr. Ambrosi, here's another one. Huge problem with the Canadian race in the CFL. You want to increase the rookie American salaries that they're coming up here. That's why they're going to AFL, the American Alliance Football League, because they're only getting 54,000 barely Canadian. Okay, because of the Canadian racial problem, Mr. Ambrosi, that creates a major imbalance in salaries in the CFL, and American rookies are getting, like I said, 54 or 55,000 Canadian. When guaranteed Canadian racial players are getting 100 to 150 to 200 to 250,000, like the grossly overpaid, terribly overrated Canadian O-linemen, guaranteed starting Canadian O-linemen. There's your problem, Mr. Ambrosi, big imbalance, okay, because of the Canadian ratio. That's where the money is. And too many cases aren't even good enough to be on a CFL, no business being on a CFL field. And they're on a CFL roster and starting in the CFL. There's your problem, Mr. Ambrosi. Why didn't you say that in the Waggle podcast? Okay? Why don't you say that to the public? Okay? The real truth. Why don't you tell the real truth, Mr. Ambrosi? What the real problem is with salaries in the CFL. That's the real problem. Okay? I could add that to another one of your contradictions, but you didn't want to go there. Okay? Yeah, you didn't want to go there. No wonder you didn't want to go there, because you'd be telling the truth and giving people the real truth and real facts on the Canadian ratio and what it's doing to our CFL 3-down game. And by the way, yes, I'm very Canadian, and yes, I said in my last podcast, if I owned a CFL team, I would want the best. I would want Canadians on my CFL team, but not because of a Canadian ratio. Only if they could make, like a John Cornish. He didn't want to go to the NFL, and not players that want to go to the NFL, players that want to play in the CFL like John Cornish, and it's good enough. John Cornish didn't need a Canadian ratio, okay? And they would have to make the team and be good enough to start and be good enough to be on a CFL roster, or they wouldn't be on the team because of their Canadian passport and their Canadian guaranteed ratio that's in place now in the CFL, and their basic Canadian Players Association that is basically running the CFL, with a president that's a guaranteed Canadian O-lineman like Mr. Ambrosi was, that dictates who starts and plays in the CFL. Not the coaches of the CFL. They dictate who starts and plays in the CFL with their Canadian ratio. That's got to go. Okay? I got about 3 minutes left here. I'm going to cover a few more things. Oh, another thing, Mr. Ambrosi. About a bit your business, the business size. I want to cover the business side that you brag about how great you are on your business size and how great you are in business. Okay? Well, if you're so great, why MLS soccer games played on CTV on Saturdays? Why are all NFL games played on CTV? Why are no CFL games played on CTV? Okay? I'm not talking TSN, I'm talking CTV. Why isn't the Grey Cup played on CTV? Okay, if you're doing such great job on the business side, okay, you call this the business season. Well, where are the results? Okay? Why aren't TSN radio stations in CFL cities, okay, covering CFL, the games? I mean, what I'm talking about is hyping it up and giving coverage and talking about CFL 3-down football. They never do. The Green Zone and Sports Cage basically in Regina, and that's not TSN Radio. And TSN Radio in Ottawa, they cover some, but not enough. Okay, the rest of them across Canada, TSN radio stations barely cover the CFL, and during the CFL game, they don't even cover it. It's a joke. They don't build it up during the week. They don't talk about it. Nothing. Okay, it's a joke. So what are you doing, Mr. Ambrosi? You're doing a great job on the business side. Yes, you're doing fantastic. Give you a big applaud, okay? Big zero. Okay? And now, this is how desperate the CFL is getting. The Riders are reporting that they're going to have a Raider-Packer preseason game during, listen to this, I got to get this in real quick, during the CFL regular season when the Riders are on in August, when they're on the road. Can you imagine that? That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable, okay? That's how desperate they are. You tell me that helps, how it helps the CFL and Riderville and the CFL Saskatchewan Roughrider ownership. You should be ashamed of yourself. And the CFL should never allow this to happen, okay? And also, I just wanted to say that on the letter that I sent to oh, did I want to cover something out? Yeah, just quickly. I can't go over the letter, but Taylor, Dave Taylor's talked about, oh, they got to reduce the Canadian ratio from 7 to 5. Mr. Taylor, that is not gonna Naylor. Sorry, that's not gonna do it. Okay, signing off. Signing.